Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your giving us the opportunity to talk to you about democracy, not only in Namibia, but in the region and on the continent as a whole. As you know, Americans don't know a great deal about Africa, to be perfectly frank. And we are trying to change that, and what we are doing, of course, is a documentary which will give an opportunity for people to understand democracy from the perspective of the leaders, from the perspective of the history, and how different African countries got to where they are today. So I wonder if we could begin by asking you to give us a little perspective on where democracy is in Namibia today.
Well, Namibia is one of those countries which had to struggle, wage a war for freedom, wage a war for democracy. It took us about 21 years of armed struggle. That is after we have been at the UN petitioning, thinking that the civilized world, so-called, would at least see to it that people have their rights. We even went to the International Court of Justice. Liberia and Ethiopia, who were the only members of the League of Nations, took the case on behalf of Africa to the International Court of Justice. But using the technicality that Liberia and Ethiopia didn't have a legal standing to bring the case to the court, the case was thrown out. So when that happened, you have to either submit and accept slavery or to stand up and fight. So in Dar es Salaam, clarion call was made that we are our own liberators. We didn't expect UN to free us. So we'll cross many rivers of blood until we achieve our independence. And indeed, it was a long struggle and a bitter struggle until you force the enemy, because these days we don't fight the war to allow others to come up with white flag. You fight them until they will be tired, the cost is too much that they will then come to a conference table. So that happened, that UN, the 5 Western countries, realized that Mozambique was gone to communist. Angola, so they thought if they don't intervene to influence the outcome where a majority of whites are, the 3 settler colonies, that is Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa, where the white people went to settle, to call it their home. Everywhere in Africa, there was an indirect rule. They were in Britain, in France, and ruling. But in Zimbabwe, in Namibia, and South Africa, white people went there and made it their home. That complicated the matters, of course. But still, we fought, and eventually, through the UN intervention, we had to have first democratic elections in 1989, which SWAPO won, and then draft a constitution. We knew we had majority, but some people thought we shouldn't get 2/3 majority. They were going to impose SWAPO constitution. But we were saying in Lusaka, even if we are going to get 2/3 or so on, the constitution must be seen to be Namibian People's Constitution, not SWAPO constitution. I was entrusted that task to go back to lead the SWAPO election directorate. And our aim was already to think pieces to return. We were divided based on color lines and also tribally. There were homelands. So our aim was to unite our people. That was our foremost goal, whether they believe it or not. So our aim was to unite our people, have the constitution which will be truly Namibian constitution. I was also elected to be the chairperson of that constituent assembly. And before I could call the first meeting, I had to visit the opposition party leaders. Confidence kind of building efforts, because we hated each other, we were enemies. So I remember I asked to see one of the Nationalist Party guy, the White Racist Party. David was his name. So I said, David, I would like to see you Where? At your house. And that was a risk. So I went over to his house. I took, now the current judge president was in my office. We came there. There was a belief that Swapos hate white people, we hate Afrikaans language, and so on. So when I came there, he was standing with his wife and speaking in Afrikaans, that they say we hate, and because we hate them, we hate Africans too. So they were talking about rooibos tea. So I told them in Afrikaans, ek wil ook graag rooibos tea hê, which means I also would like to have rooibos tea. And that broke the ice.
You would also like to have what?
Rooibos tea, what is it? Red bush tea.
Red bush tea, yeah.
So that broke the ice. I spoke their language, and I asked their tea. So when we went inside, ice already broken. So I told him, Mr. David, I am your chairman. As you know, I'm through and through SWAPO. But I was elected to chair the Constituent Assembly. So as it is humanly possible, I will be impartial, and I would like you to trust me that I am your chairman also. I don't know what your fears are, the bottom line about a black government. But we as SWAPOs have things like our children to have 3 square meals a day, have lights to study under, place to sleep, and go to school unmolested and come back. Those are the things we believe into as Christians. So what I think is education is very important. We would like to give our children Christian education. And if you can just give the white people 10 best schools, there will be no problem. Now when you said first, we believe in those things, I said, you see, it's a fear of the unknown. We were divided, we didn't communicate, we didn't talk. Now that I'm telling you what my concerns are, we are together. That's why we're going to sit together to draft a constitution that will encompass all our needs. But the strange thing is, he was asking for 10 best schools.
Yes.
Again, trying to reinforce apartheid.
Yeah, of course.
So lucky enough, there was another white party leader, 2 of them. When that came out in the white community,
Yes.
2 of them opposed it. White guys.
Yeah.
They said, we're not going to re-establish rich men's white apartheid. So that's how
that came about. 2 follow-up questions, Mr. Prime Minister. Why did the court throw out the case, the first case that you referred to?
They said Liberia and Ethiopia didn't have legal interest. They're not Namibians, they were Liberia and Ethiopia. So they didn't have a legal standing to bring
the
material
case.
Interest to bring the case to the court.
So they had no standing,
They had no standing.
effectively. Yeah. And could you take a little time and describe what that first election was about? Because it wasn't electing a candidate as you do today, was it? Could you describe what was the election about, the first election?
The elections was about the Constituent Assembly. Assembly to be elected and to draft the Constitution. We are proud that I say in my thesis that there are only 3 countries which have these assemblies. The Philadelphia Convention, Assembly Nationale in Paris, and then Namibia Constituent Assembly.
Yeah, right.
That's how I put it. So we are the first African country who had to draft our own constitution.
Yes.
Others were in Lancaster House and in Paris and so on.
Yes.
But our constitution we drafted in Namibia.
But SWAPO was selected in the election, the first election you had, as a party. How did you select a president, the first president of the Republic?
What we did is that after we now finished drafting the constitution, the Constituent Assembly was transformed into the National Assembly.
Okay.
And it was said in transitional clauses that the first Constituent Assembly will be transformed into National Assembly and will appoint the first president.
I see.
And he shall serve for 2 5-year terms. That's very important.
I know.
Later on, I will come to that why 3rd term came in.
I would like you to expand on that 3rd term because I was there
Yeah, okay.
when the election was taking place for the 3rd term, and there was some controversy about whether the president had standing to, and would it be constitutional.
Yes.
Do you want to just comment on that?
Now, what I did is, since the transitional clause was talking about the first president will be elected and serve for 2 5-year terms.
Yes.
That's in transitional clause, not in the Constitution, the body of the Constitution.
I see. I see.
So we only amended that 2 into 3.
I see.
That the first president will be elected by Constituent Assembly and will serve for 3 5-year terms.
I see. I
So it
see.
didn't change the body of the
I see.
Constitution.
But the
The term
Constitution.
limit was not touched.
I understand completely. I wonder if you could give us some perspective now that I appreciate that background that you've just given us on how Namibia got to the democratic society that it is today. But could you describe what is going on with respect to two things: citizen participation and political leadership? How would you assess those two things as aspects of your democracy today?
Well, first, the concept of democracy must also be defined. It's a word Western countries like to use quite often, and it is just talked about political democracy, that you are electing people, and that's it. But democracy must be deeper than that. Citizen participation, in which way? Politically only to vote, or also economically. So we like to look at democracy as also having economic democracy, because there's no need to have good constitution, which we have, peaceful elections, which we are going to have even for 6th time without any problems. But if people are still poor,
Yes.
majority are still living in the same conditions, then you have to ask, is democracy really working? Are the citizens participating politically? Yes. But are they participating also economically? So we have to revisit, redefine democracy to also include economic democracy. So, having said that, Namibia is a democracy in the classical sense of the word. We have free and fair elections. We had so far 5. Now we are going to go for 6 elections. We elect the president. President is elected direct, just like here. And then National Assembly for Parliament. And when we are going to have elections, first let me go back to term limits.
Sure.
What to talk about. Our Constitution limits the term of a president to 2 5-year terms.
Yes.
Now, after the founding president served the 3rd term, and I will tell you, he was very popular. He is popular. If he wanted to stand, he could have stood, but there could have been maybe some consequences.
Yeah.
But he could have been re-elected. But he stepped down after serving the 3rd term. Yeah. And then the new president came up, who, when he was inaugurated for the 2nd term, stood there and said, "This is my 2nd and last term."
Interesting.
So what go there?
Yeah.
Inauguration.
Yeah.
And throughout, you will hear him saying, now he is counting actually days.
Yeah.
He says, I have only so long to be here. So that New Africa, I call it.
Yes. Yes.
That New Africa, where we are not anymore about coups or leaders trying to die in the offices, that kind of a thing. But definitely, leaders are there, they know, they are elected, and they will be there only for 2 or 1 term. Why are they ready to go? They are ready to go because they are respected. Today, we have about close to 26 former presidents staying in their countries.
Yeah.
Not like in the past. Once you are former president, you are either in jail, you are in exile, or you are dead.
They did. Yes.
But today, because they are respected and they are also playing a role, because they have experience, they must advise. And therefore, they are so engaged, and therefore, they are in the country, therefore, they can go. Like my president is saying, I want to go and rest.
Right. Yes.
Because he will be a free man, and so on.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is a very good place to transition and to the region. But let me just ask about one other thing about democracy in Namibia right now. Are you optimistic about democracy not only at the national level but regionally within the country?
Firstly, about citizen participation. Our Constitution, Article 17, is enjoining people to participate politically. So it's a requirement by the Constitution that they must partake in politics.
Yeah.
So our people are therefore...
So they're required to vote?
Yeah, they're required to vote,
Very good.
not forced. Now we had to have voter registration. It was going on. It just ended 2 days ago. And eligible voters were about 1.2 million.
Oh,
And they have registered already when I had last, about 1.1 million.
okay.
And there will be supplementary registration in September. Then you are going to put that for examination by opposition and so on.
Right.
Are the dead people on there? So that's how transparent
Yes.
our democratic process is.
Very good.
But we think of process, not just the end results.
Yes, yes.
So process of registration, electoral system, commissions must also be very, very transparent. And that way, if they're going to declare elections free and fair, those who lose must accept because it was a transparent process.
Yes.
So ours already started.
Yes.
But some observers will only come at the last time.
Sure.
What do they see? They should have been there in Namibia already. Because we
Yes.
started the process, now fighting.
No, right.
People were lining up to register. That's how process is. People participation is there.
So, and in terms of the system itself, there is local government. What about the traditional leaders, the chiefs and so on? How do they participate under a modern constitution?
Well,
Is there a constitutional provision for the traditional leaders?
we have firstly unitary state. Unitary state, not federal state.
Yeah.
Because we are reacting to division of apartheid to create so-called homelands for us.
I see.
So we therefore talk about strong central government. But after having done that, we realized the country is too big, and administratively, we are creating regions. So we have 14 regions.
I see. I see.
Government closer, and then you have the local authorities. You have 3-tier government, just like you have here too.
Yeah.
You have the national government,
Yes.
then regional and local authorities. Now the constitution, you should know the chiefs were being used by a party. Many of are not traditional chiefs in true sense of the word. They were appointed, they were co-opted and used against the British movement, many of them. So they are not good friends of the liberation struggle.
Yes, right.
So their role is not that well defined in the constitution.
I see.
There is only one place where it says we recognize them
Yes.
and they will advise the president on use of traditional land. That's all.
Interesting. That's the
But
only
we
provision.
also created a council where they annually have their assembly. And president opens that meeting and then they discuss traditional issues, they pass resolutions, we look at it, it goes to the land ministry and it's taken up.
So it's primarily ceremonial.
Yeah, it's
The role itself. Yeah. Right.
we are not kingdom, we are a republic.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Let's turn a little bit to the region now. You alluded to the fact that I think you were suggesting that the day of President for Life is over in much of Africa, certainly over in Namibia, if it ever existed there, but not necessarily in your region. You still have at least one, maybe two, depends on how you look at the Swaziland and Zimbabwe as two regional. What do you think of the prospect for this to be a continuing problem in Africa in general? Not just talking about those two, but that there will still
Yes.
who aspire to be president for life.
No. The Queen has been a Queen in England for over 60 years. Or
Yes, yes,
and nobody seems to talk about it.
yeah, yes,
Nobody. Swaziland is a kingdom,
yes,
just like the Queen in England. So let's drop him.
Yes.
Leave him out.
yes,
And then we can talk about Zimbabwe.
yes.
Zimbabwe had elections, free and fair elections, democratic elections where they elected the president. People are quiet. You don't just have to hate a person. Look at what the people are saying.
Yes.
People elected, this was last year, President Mugabe overwhelmingly. And therefore there is peace in Zimbabwe. people are running. Let's allow them to run their business.
Yes, yes.
Because they had definitely democratic elections. No violence, unlike the past elections.
Yeah.
And besides that, I want to also defend here and explain something. I talk about three settler government countries, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa.
South Africa, yes.
You had President Mugabe, first one, reconciliation started by him to accommodate white people. It's Mugabe who started it. He is the one who made Ian Smith, who locked him up for 10 years for nothing. For nothing, for asking for democracy.
Right.
He was locked up. And Ian Smith died at his farm, not seized by Mugabe, peacefully, never arrested, never harassed. He died.
Yes, yes.
And then we came, fought Semnyoma, fought the white people who are the settlers.
Yes.
We regard themselves as Namibians. We accommodated them. We put some of them in the government, and today they are having peace, proper peace. That's us. Then Mandela came after us.
Yeah, sure, right.
So that's what we have.
But
In other parts of Africa, people are elected, some, I don't know who is staying longer, but Kenya just had elections. You see, I'm just trying to point out the folly of
course,
democracy and so on.
Yeah.
Who decides? In Kenya, whatever happened. People went to the polls, two candidates campaigned, running mates and so on, and won the election.
Yeah, right.
Now we still want to take them to court.
Yes.
Whose court? If the people's court has spoken to say we want these two people to be our leaders, Kenyans said that. But somebody wants to sit somewhere and say they must still come to The Hague. This is why we think sometimes there is hypocrisy. You like a person, it's okay. You don't like a person, you must face certain things. Kenya's case is very good.
Yeah.
Here, two leaders were accused by the so-called International Court, Criminal Court, are the ones who won democratic election. But Kenyan people, isn't that the highest court? When Kenyans have spoken, who else must go and judge?
Speaking of the role of Western countries in African countries' affairs, I wonder if you would talk a little bit more about what you resent about the West's role in, say, Namibian affairs.
Hypocrisy. You see, sometimes you want from Africa what you do not even do in your own countries. I was telling the American ambassador once, when we were talking, she was talking about how things are done here and so on and so on. So I said, Madam Ambassador, I'm very proud that we are only about 15 years old and we are so advanced that you are comparing me with how you do things in 200 something old country. That's an achievement to us. So that's what I think they don't seem to realize, that there are differences.
Yes. Yes.
Differences of even education, culture. You must develop a political culture, how you do things into it. Here you have one-party state, United States. I call it one-party state. It's your political culture. You only can have Democrats and Republicans. Are you telling me in such a progressive country you're going to have a communist? No socialists? How come France will have socialists? Other countries in Europe, even UK has several parties.
Yes.
But here you have only two. And it's one party. Because it's only personalities who are changing. But you have a political culture accepted by everybody. So your constitution is going to be there, your flag is going to be there, practices are going to be there. That's the political culture you establish after a long time. Give Africa that chance too, to establish political culture, how they do things in their countries. No interference. So that way, although you have one party state, it works for you.
Well, I'll disagree with you gently, Mr. Prime Minister. We do have Communist Party, Socialist Party, Conservative Party in New York, where you went to university.
Are they in the Senate? Are they in the...
No, they're not.
How come not?
The people didn't elect them.
You see, political culture. They were told not to elect communists. Democracy doesn't
Advertising probably tells them that.
Yes.
But your point is well taken. I am also interested not only in the U.S. and U.S. Influence in Namibia and other countries, but what about the EU and then also China?
Let me first talk about the U.S.
Yes, please.
We have very, very good bilateral relations.
Sure.
One thing I must say here in public is President Bush, conservative,
Yeah.
we can say, but he is one man who did something for Africa.
Yeah.
Not talking, but doing. The PEPFAR, the President's program for AIDS,
Yes.
that has helped. Namibia got help from there. We are one of the highly infected countries. We have stopped the infection rate. We have stamped it because of PEPFAR.
Yes.
And it's also recognized that we did very well because of that
Yes.
assistance. The other one is also the President's Millennium Challenge account, which is now being stopped. We didn't qualify because we are supposed to be each country. I can talk about that too.
Yes.
But we got a special exception, and we got that compact for 5 years,
Yes.
which is now ending September.
Yeah.
I made a start in Washington. I come there. Yeah. That project made impact at education level, at tourism and so on. Definitely visible schools, school books and so on. Beautiful.
Yes.
But it's been stopped.
Right.
It had impact. So sometimes we thought as Africans only Democrats are friends of Africa. But I say in this country you have presidents who are feel-good presidents.
Yes.
You feel good when they are there.
And then you have presidents who do good.
And the presidents who do.
Right.
If you take Kennedy and Johnson.
They will feel good.
Johnson, Kennedy was feel good,
Yeah.
but Johnson did.
Yeah.
You see? So here too, Bush did.
Yeah.
Others are feel good.
By the way, I hear that about President Bush throughout Africa, particularly
Even
in terms
here.
of Africa, in West
Didn't
Africa.
he appoint for the first time Powell as Secretary of State?
Yes.
As very in the office in line of succession.
Yes.
From Bush.
Right.
And also Condoleezza Rice.
Yes.
Those two important moves were done by the conservatives.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. We always say they have a free hand to do things.
they are determined when they do it.
They want to achieve it. Europe, and then China.
Europe, EU, when I was a Minister of Trade, I used to fight with them because they still have the same approach. You don't have your own views. They sit in Brussels. They want you to sign economic partnership agreements, determined by them, predetermined by them. Partnership is of equals. It must be of equals. There must be transparency and accountability. Then you trust each other. When you sit in Brussels, decide we must not do this and this, and you tell them we have specific needs as Namibia. We gave them, but they're trying to give us deadlines to sign.
Yeah, right.
So that kind of a thing, I say a colonial approach. So I told them off, and now we are making, we're a little bit moving. China is very first #1 power in the world, from nowhere. Overtook Japan, and don't always. When we were fighting for independence, some Americans were concerned about us being influenced by communists, Soviet Union, and so on. But American government has an embassy in Moscow. Russians were having embassy here. Why worry about me, ordinary person? You are dealing there with embassies. Now, same with China. China is rescuing Americans. Nobody is worried about it, but they're worried about what China is doing in Africa. China is here. You must worry about China here, isn't it? Because they're everywhere. So, having said that, China's approach is different. China is having maybe, first they are riding behind the thing that you're not colonizing anybody. They were only supporters of the British movement. So when they come with that, you cannot deny it. You cannot fault them. They're supporting us. And now, even now, as I'm sitting here, I was in Cuba, met by Castro, Raul Castro, as a comrade, Raul Castro, met him. We talked as friends, people who were in the struggle together. China, I'm invited to go there by president. I'm going to meet him there, the Prime Minister, President, top 4 people. That relationship, friendship. You cannot say that about Western countries, with us as Africans. That's what the difference is. So we are a little bit talking about them as our friends. And Americans sometimes treat you when you are outsider as nothing. When you are in the office, you want to
Right.
you.
Sure.
It doesn't work like that. Friendship is cultivated.
Right. Yeah.
When you are nothing, you must recognize me too. Then we can have a better relationship.
I understand. Let's talk a little bit about how Africa has really organized itself in terms of participation and supporting each other. And Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like to ask about you, if you would comment on this as a group, and specifically, if you would like, ECOWAS, SADC, or the Southern African Development Community, and the AU. What roles do you see for these organizations in Africa today, which may have an impact on how the West is used or is needed in the future?
Well, firstly, there will be transactional leadership, transactional organizations, and transformational leadership and transformational organizations. I regard OAU as transactional organization. It was there to do one thing: liberation of Africa.
In the early version of
OAU.
The OAU.
It did that. After that, what? Nothing.
Okay.
And then AU came. AU says we cannot tolerate a regime who comes in power by way of a coup. Therefore, we interfere in domestic affairs of other countries in Africa who may be violating human rights. OAU was not doing that. They're only there to liberate Africa. And then you have also 6 regions in AU. It is a special region, 6th one, to involve the diaspora, both the slave diaspora and economic diaspora, so that they can also have an input in ECOSOC of AU, so that there will be an input from people.
I see.
There is also a Pan-African Parliament, so that Parliament which meets in South Africa, so that people, unlike us, OAU, it's only for heads of state.
Right.
People are also being involved. Now we are saying you must first have regional economic commissions, RECs, because Kwame Nkrumah used to say immediate unity. Nyerere was saying gradualism. You must first have common approach in regions.
Right.
So we all agree we must first have regional commissions
Yes.
to harmonize our practices, how we do things now. SADC, for instance. SADC region is the most advanced one because we have similar, like right now, there are about 5 countries who have democratic elections this year.
In SADC or
In SADC.
Yeah, right. Yeah, SADC. How many countries make up SADC?
We are 12.
12 in all,
14.
yeah.
14.
Yeah, okay.
14. So there will be 5 who have elections. Only odd countries, slightly DRC and maybe Mozambique, Angola, because of languages.
Yeah, language, yes.
But we have common
Everything else.
administrative approaches. So you must therefore provide free movement of people and goods and so on in that region. Then you have the free trade areas extended to East African community, eventually COMESA. So that's how ECOWAS come in. So after you have now normalized, regularized your ways of doing things, politically, democratically, administratively,
Yes.
you can one day have union government. That's how we approach this. RECs, as we call them.
How would you rate AU's accomplishments after 50 years? You just celebrated, I think in 2013, 2012, the 50 years of AU?
50 of OAU?
Of OAU through
And-
AU, yes, yes.
So I already explained OAU was to free the
Yeah,
continent.
right.
It succeeded. Then after it finished the task, now we have a new approach under AU. And I would say the way we are starting to have institutions, including people's participation.
Yes,
Any democratic country or practice must involve people.
right.
So AU is now involving people.
And
Other thing they have succeeded is out of 10 commissioners, there must be a 50-50 representation.
I see.
And ever since beginning, 5 women, 5 men. We are advanced.
You've advanced. That's very good. You can teach us some things in the West,
yes,
maybe.
Yes. So
Now,
that's how it is.
Mr. Prime Minister, it's interesting that you made the comment about relating to people, because if you talk to people in the streets in any country in Africa, any that I've been to, there's totally irrelevant AU to them. They have no concept of what it does. They see no value in it to them. Is this a problem of substance or a problem of PR?
Go to Namibia and talk about it. I don't know where you are talking to people.
Well, Liberia, Ghana.
Liberia is different. But definitely in Namibia, people know.
They know about AU.
They know AU.
Is that right?
It freed us.
Yeah.
OAU had Liberation Committee in Dar es Salaam. All of us who waged our struggles were supported or coordinated through OAU committee.
I see.
So, of course, people are also free. Do you know how many people know so much about anything in this country?
Right.
They are free. They don't care. So when people are free, they don't care about political things. Only those who are interested, professors like you, are the ones who care. There are many Americans who don't care about
don't care.
what is happening in the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Multi-party in African countries in general.
Multipartyism is there. Some parties mushroom with election time.
You had 21 fielding presidential candidates in Liberia the last time.
Yes, but they disappear after elections. But there will always be multi-party elections, because what we have in Namibia is proportional representation, which we adopted because it allows smaller parties to get something. There are white parties who never got threshold to be elected, but because of proportional representation, they had representation throughout.
Do they have to get at least a minimum vote?
They get minimum, but they get what they call principle of biggest remainder principle. So if SWAPO got threshold is about 10,000 in a seat, and if SWAPO got 10 seats and there are 500 votes of SWAPO, that will be transferred to the smallest party.
I see.
But
they don't have to get a minimum of 5% of the popular vote in order to get. They're entitled then to representation.
The idea is to really be more democratic.
Yeah.
You see, winner takes all principle. Even if you have 51 and I have 49, come on, I have support from 49% of people. That's a big number. But in the winner takes all that is gone.
Yes. Mr. Prime Minister, though, is it likely that in some countries there's going to be a member of another party elected to the presidency? And I think specifically about Botswana. We don't know yet about South Africa, but we can say that the ANC there, SWAPO in Namibia. Liberia's been different, but they managed to do it through civil wars and that sort of thing. And Ghana has actually gone back and forth.
But I just ask the question back and I will answer. Do you think Communist Party will be elected in this country?
No, I don't.
Why not?
I don't. Well, I don't think they have the number of people that's following them that will happen. Is that what the case is in Africa with some of these parties?
Definitely. You see, if people are going to be elected, there will be a change.
Yes.
But just like you have only one party state here, we have two parties.
Well, I think the point I was getting at, though, is this. Is there in the country the development of leadership that will allow to be other strong parties to emerge?
There will always be leaders. Don't worry about leadership. There will always be somebody to take over.
Right.
But I'm trying to talk about knocking on those parties which are liberation movement parties who are long in office. Right. They are being targeted.
Right. Yes.
And I'm saying same way of democratic and republic, it will go on until people definitely one day will say, if those leaders are going to be old parties are not delivering, they will change.
Sure. Yeah.
And we have the youth. Our strength is liberation struggle, that's history. And people who are still voting are majority still old people who recall oppression.
Of course, that's right.
So once these young people come, we call them born frees.
Yes.
Who don't know anything about struggle. My daughter is there. Disagrees with me.
They have no recollection.
They have no recollection.
Right.
That's going to bring about change.
I see.
But you have to manage change. Change for the sake of change destroyed countries.
Yes.
People are still suffering in many countries in Iraq and so on.
Sure, sure.
People are dead who were targeted.
Yeah, of course.
People are still dying.
Sure.
So
Makes
change
sense.
must be managed.
Yeah, sure.
Don't just go for change for the sake.
What do you think is the greatest threat to democracy in Africa?
Greatest threat, poverty.
Poverty. Yeah.
Poverty. If people are poor, anybody can tempt them. So poverty, education, of course. Education will empower them,
Right.
take care of themselves.
Sure.
So education,
Right.
poverty, health now is a problem too. So if you have education, health, as we do in our budget, biggest chunk goes to education and health. That's a good direction.
Yes.
So poverty.
Yeah. that's-
Housing, basic needs of people will be housing, clothing, and food.
And,
If
and,
people cannot have that, we are going to have problems.
and all of the African leaders that I talk to say precisely that, poverty, and some of the people in the street. But there was a disturbing number of people in the street when you ask them what they thought the greatest threat to democracy would say corruption. They didn't necessarily have examples specifically, but the word was mentioned more frequently than any other single word. If you ask them about education and poverty, they would agree with you. But they voluntarily
They were
would say,
brainwashed by you.
you think so?
Yes.
I think that's the real thing.
Africa is synonymous of corruption. That's how they were taught by Western countries. So if people are talking about I think as I was saying already, corruption, whatever it is, only Africans can stop it. Nobody can do it from outside. So therefore what you have to do is that leadership has to lead. We are doing it in Namibia. We have set up our own systems that are working, but people are just talking. I warned them. I worked for 4 years. It's difficult to set up the Anti-Corruption Commission. It was not easy. And I was saying, don't use the word loosely. It will lose its meaning. But when you are going to say somebody is corrupt, that person must shiver because he must say, oh, I'm in trouble. But when you are just referring to everything as corruption,
Everything across the
I'll just laugh, that's how they say it. So even a corrupt person will say, that's how they always say it. But if you can use the word sparingly, and when you say somebody is corrupt, that person must know he's in trouble or she's in trouble. So corruption is a thing Africans are fighting against. But who corrupts Africans? See, who brings in corruption?
No, we didn't get it right.
Somebody.
What role do you see for foreign aid in Africa in the future? And not only in terms of the amount of it, but how it's to be administered?
Foreign aid is dead. Well, it's foreign aid in Africa anymore.
Is what?
Foreign aid is dead. It's
Yeah.
investment now and trade.
Has to be
They
investment.
told us it's a trade and investment.
Yeah.
Foreign aid, as we knew it in the past, some of us don't get it. Because Namibia is known as so-called middle, what is it?
High,
Middle
middle
income
emerging.
So we are rich, we are told, because they take the gross domestic product, divide a small population of 2 million, and come up with a high
With a nice
per capita,
Sure.
which is very unfair.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
A mathematical process.
sure.
But
sure.
they know there was apartheid, people are poor.
Sure.
But
sure.
they come after that. So we don't get aid
Yeah.
because we are rich.
You don't, yeah, because
So foreign aid.
you and
really is-
Botswana and
we also
countries like
like
that.
to not to have aid, you know.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's
Investments,
we have
right.
resources. Investment, yes.
What would you like to see in Namibia 10 years from now?
We would like Namibia to be peaceful. Namibia has the potential to be an example in Africa of country, prosperous country, where citizens are happy, their needs are taken care of, and we have done in the party internal democracy. I believe in Africa as a whole that we must look at, however, electoral democracy everywhere. No more coups. We condemn those who come by a coup. We expel them from ourselves.
Yes, yes.
Now, what next? We must have processes, systems, and institutions. So, electoral process must be foolproof,
Yes.
so that the losers can know it was fair.
Right, right.
Then you must have a system, like when you couldn't count here
Yeah, yeah, sure.
during Bush and The goals and because
Hanging chads.
yes, but in that is a very important lesson. Transparency.
Yes,
That's what we saw them.
sure.
So each one had this transparent way. That's very important. System. Clinton was a president.
Sure.
No armed cars. When everything else fails, the courts.
Of course.
That's what Africa needs.
Of course.
To buttress democracy.
Is there anything that you would like to add, Mr. Prime Minister? That either I asked
Well,
about or
thank you very much. And what you are doing is very great. We said earlier, people do not know about Africa. And US citizens are the worst.
Yes. Yeah.
So what you are doing is very, very important. Besides that, we say in Namibia, or I say in Namibia, no one must feel left out. And also we say Namibia is a child of international solidarity. And therefore we don't want to have any enemy. Everybody must be friend to us. We do know there are countries who are close to us during the struggle, like Cuba, like China and so on. But our approach is everybody is our friend. Yes, no enemies. We're too small to have enemies. And also internally, you must not have enemies. So you must treat your people as family. Let them not feel that none of them feel they're left out based on their tribe, region, or color.
Could you expand on the tribal divisions in Namibia? Of course, you have tribes. You don't hear a great deal outside. We don't hear enough information anyway about conflicts. What are the greatest conflicts that you have to deal with as a government?
We don't, because there was a big furor about my elections. You know, when we were campaigning, some people thought, because I'm from a minority tribe,
Right.
as they call it, you know, I don't know minority to who.
Yeah.
But some people thought if you are Oshiwambo speaking, you are automatically going to be a leader and so on.
Yes.
And SWAPO is majority Oshiwambo speaking people, but that population size. And we campaigned for SWAPO, it's not Ovambo.
Yes.
But, and in the internal democracy in the party, we decided each post must have 3 contestants.
So you're aware of it and you balance it.
Well, not balance, we fought.
You fought, yeah.
It was a very serious elections I won. And I defeated other people who were Oshiwambo speaking, majority speaking.
Yes, yes.
So tribalism, therefore, doesn't work.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been a candidate now for future.
You think that if you had provided more explicitly for the for your traditional leaders, that tribalism would be a bigger factor in Namibia today? You didn't provide for them in the Constitution in any strong way.
If you gave them, see, traditional leaders are tribe.
Yes.
But there is nothing wrong with tribe. We must be proud. We have our tribes, our culture. But culture is what? Learned behavior. Through that, you say I. If you say tribalism, ism, that you think only your tribe is important, only your region is important. You can only trust your tribesperson, or only your girls are beautiful. Then you are practicing tribalism.
Yes.
That's what Africans were doing.
Yeah.
When you are tribalist, you want to only be surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a way of starting. But if you can have tribe, ethnic group, proud of your language, respect other people's tribes and culture also. You see, don't you think your language is the only one to be spoken?
Yes.
And you are definitely preparing a war.
Yeah.
But if you respect everybody else's language, culture, and you all can now develop in Namibia, I hope, national culture.
Right.
That will be all tribes joining. That is the task we have to face now. We don't have it yet.
Don't have it. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Really genuinely appreciate it.